You're listening to the Health and Happiness Podcast with Travis Kemper and
Lauren Maxwell. Each episode, we share easy-to-implement strategies to improve your health, happiness, and overall quality of life. The way to deal with the devil of obesity and diabetes is literally one day at a time. Stephen first. How's it going, Travis?
Great. We just got back from a camping trip about an hour ago. I scratched the heck out of my new truck and I rode my new dirt bike for the first time.
Awesome. Wow, that sounds like a great weekend.
Yeah, it was fun. Saw some elk. Heard a lot of moo cows. Heard some coyotes.
Moo cows.
Yeah, moo cows.
That's what I call them too.
Heard some coyotes. That was fun.
Super cool. And it was cooler up there, I bet.
Yeah, it was like 70 degrees as the high. It was awesome.
Perfect.
And Duke barked, and then he heard his echo, and he barked at his echo.
Oh my gosh.
He does this every time we're out in the woods. It's wild.
That is so cute.
It can go on for like 20 minutes.
Have you filmed it?
No.
You should totally, just for me. I really want to see it.
Yeah, I should.
That's super cute.
Yeah, he actually runs towards his echo sometimes and starts barking towards it.
Oh my gosh, Duke.
He's a goofball. How's it going, Lauren?
It's going good. I'm super tired today for some reason, so hopefully I don't just start laughing my head off during this episode. But I did some push-ups before, so hopefully we're gonna be okay. Anyway, Nolan, Jesse, and I went to a concert on Friday with The Warning, The Pretty Reckless, and Hailstorm. Those were there was technically a third band. I think the name was Lilith Czar, but we missed it. We didn't get there in time.
That'd be a fourth band.
What?
Nothing. Keep going.
Fourth band. Did I say third?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. See, I told you I was tired. Good thing I had that disclaimer. Anyway, the rest of the three were incredible, the ones that we saw. If you aren't familiar with any of those bands, they're all female rock bands. The Pretty Reckless is one of mine and Nolan's all-time favorite bands. We've actually done a couple of covers of their songs, which I think I have at least one of them on Instagram. And Taylor Momsen, who's the lead singer of The Pretty Reckless, saw it and liked it and commented on it. So we were blown away, starstruck. Anyway, so it was amazing to see all three of these bands in person. I've also been a big fan of Hailstorm for a really long time, and they put on an incredible show. As a whole, I think it's probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to so far. I am going to see Panic at the Disco in October, which is probably my number one all-time favorite band for ever and ever and ever. So we'll see how that show compares to this one.
Nice.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today, Travis?
Today, we're going to talk about obesity. And it's going to start out kind of negative because if you're not aware, obesity is not good. But we will leave you with some reminders that you have power over this to control your situation. And that's where we're going.
Awesome. So, the effects of obesity are wide and detrimental. First of all, we'll talk about obesity and COVID because that is very relevant in the time that we are living in. So the World Health Organization proclaimed the global epidemic of obesity more than 20 years ago. Research has found that higher obesity rates indeed cause an increase in mortality rates in those infected by COVID-19 globally. And additionally, on a global level, high obesity rates are the primary cause of higher mortality rates due to COVID-19. One cross-sectional study also showed that GDP as an indicator of economic status of a country directly influences the increase in a population of people with overweight and obesity.
Yeah, so a new literature review concluded that hypertension had the strongest correlation with COVID-19 incidence, and second was obesity. Obesity was also positively correlated to the severity of COVID-19 cases and was believed to contribute to mechanical difficulties with respiration, which makes sense. One of the reasons people have sleep apnea is because their stomach is compressing their internal organs when they sleep, when they're overweight. So That totally makes sense. Diabetes was also believed to contribute to COVID-19 severity by producing a chronic inflammatory state and interfering with neutrophil and T cell function. Diabetes is strongly correlated with obesity.
Yes. So how does this impact, or how does obesity impact vaccines? There was a 2021 study that found that central obesity, and I think they defined that as not like BMI, based on BMI. It was based on something probably better than BMI. So the study found that central obesity, hypertension, and smoking are all associated with lower absorption levels following the COVID-19 vaccine. The researchers note that while, quote, it is currently impossible to determine whether lower coronavirus absorption leads to higher likelihood of developing COVID-19, it is well established that neutralizing antibodies correlate with protection against several viruses, including the coronavirus.
That sounds like a total cop-out, and they just didn't want to say, hey, being obese not only makes you more at risk of dying from the virus, but it also makes the vaccine completely worthless for you. Yeah. So, yeah, they just copped out again. Obesity and diabetes. So the accumulation of an excessive amount of body fat can cause type 2 diabetes, and the risk of type 2 diabetes increases linearly with an increase in body mass index. I know you don't like a body mass index, Lauren, but for most people, unless you look like The Rock, it's a pretty good number.
Keely has something to say about it, I guess, too.
She's backing you up. The cellular and physiological mechanisms responsible for the weak link between obesity and type 2 diabetes are complex and involve adiposity-induced alterations in B cell function, adipose tissue biology, adipose is fat, so fat tissue biology, multi-organ insulin resistance, which are often improved and can even be normalized with adequate weight loss.
So there is some research on obesity and young cardiac death. Obesity has been linked with sudden cardiac death in a dose-response manner, with reported increased rates of cardiomyopathy, arrhythmia, and coronary artery disease. Overall, obesity is now considered the most common non-ischemic cause of sudden cardiac death. One study in Victoria, Australia, found that over half, so about 55%, I think it was, of young Australians' sudden cardiac death patients are obese, and with all obesity classes overrepresented compared to the general population. So more of the population is obese, right? That's what that's saying.
Yeah, so far, it sounds like obesity pretty much makes you more at risk of every bad outcome ever.
Pretty much. And young, it affects you not just in old age, but also
But let's continue and see how it does with pregnancy.
Sure, why not? Let's just continue the party.
So overweight and obesity before pregnancy and excessive gestational weight gain are major determinants of risk for pregnancy loss, gestational diabetes, hypertensive conditions, and labor complications and maternal death. All of them. Is that one of the reasons why our maternal death rates are so high in this country? Because our obesity is so high, and it's higher among poorer people? A contributing factor, I would imagine.
I would imagine, yeah.
Excessive weight gain in pregnancy and postpartum weight retention compromise future fertility and increase risk for future pregnancies. No surprise there. Pretty much nothing in your body works near as well when you're overweight or obese. Large randomized control trials have had little success in addressing excessive gestational weight gain and antenatal complications. Individualized, culturally sensitive, and responsive interventions appear to have greater success. So individual programs instead of large randomized control trials. So that makes sense. Like
I
I
was
would
going to
imagine,
say, that makes total sense. Like even anything we do in our jobs is never like a one size fits all. It is like
it's exactly where I was
yeah,
going to go.
yeah, exactly.
And even
Individualized
if
program.
right, and even if I have 5 patients that need the exact same thing, which is rare if ever, they're probably going to have better outcomes if I work with each one of them for 45 minutes like I do versus if I worked with all 5 of them at the same time for
Yes,
45 minutes total.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so that totally makes sense. People like individualized care.
Wow.
Pregnancy can serve as a teachable moment when women may be their most receptive to messages about their health. That sounds like it's a guess on like a hypothesis on their part, but that I hope that is
I
true.
mean, I think that's
However,
generally true for most
yeah,
women.
I
Sure.
think so too. However, unclear guidance on diet and physical activity, weight stigma from health professionals, and stretched resources put the health of women and babies at risk. At the end of the day, you're responsible for your health. Sorry.
Yeah. On my own personal note, as a pregnant aspiring person, I can agree that the understanding in general, especially on physical activity, seems to be really confusing. When you talk about exercise and pregnancy with others, there are so many people who are under the impression, and maybe this was like based on research from a long time ago, I'm not really sure, but people are under the impression that there are a massive amount of restrictions as far as exercise in pregnancy goes, to the point where like people are afraid to exercise and be pregnant. And honestly, I just don't think any of that's true anymore. From my understanding in general, if you are active prior to pregnancy, it is considered safe to keep up that activity level, especially with regards to like lifting. But I've also heard a variety of things, even from other health professionals. So I can understand the fear as a pregnant person because you want to do everything right for your baby, and there just seems like there's a lot of contradictions surrounding what is considered safe.
Yeah,
It's confusing.
this happens with pregnant women. This happens with cancer patients with cancer.
For anything.
Yeah, like, and what we find more and more, especially recent research, like if you look at the newer stuff, is that everything gets better when you exercise. Like your whole body just works better, whether you're feeding another organism or trying to get rid of cancerous cells.
Right.
Everything works better.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Just crazy. I remember even like asking my own like gynecologist, like, what am I supposed to do when I'm pregnant? And I feel like even her answer was like not specific enough. Like I wanted her to just be like, keep doing what you're doing. Like it's as simple as that. Like I don't know, whatever. Anyway, moving on. Obesity and cancer. That was a great segue, Travis. A prospective cohort study of 15,286 patients with greater than or equal to 10 years of diabetes found that obesity and high glycemic variability were associated with increased risk of all-site breast, liver cancer, and cancer-specific death in type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of things that say basically your risk of all types of cancer are much higher if you were obese. Mm-hmm. Obesity and productivity. So this would be economic productivity. An Australian study looked to estimate the benefits of preventing obesity in terms of years of life, productivity, adjusted life years, and associated costs over 10 years. They estimated that over the next 10 years, 132 million years of life and 81 million productivity adjusted life years would be lived by Australians aged 20 to 69 years, contributing approximately $17 trillion to the Australian economy in terms of GDP. So that much is going to be lost due to obesity. That's kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. A 5% reduction in new cases of obesity led to a gain of 663 years of life and 1,229 productivity adjusted life years, equivalent to $262 million in GDP. A 5% reduction in new cases of obesity. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Unfortunately, it keeps going up.
Yeah.
There are very few, if any, countries that are reducing obesity.
Yeah.
At least not wealthy countries.
It's true. Very true. So we have a study that looks at obesity and trends among incident dialysis patients. This national study demonstrated that the obesity epidemic has worsened among incident adult dialysis patients. Relative to normal BMI, waitlisting rates for a kidney transplant with class 2 and 3 obesity were lower and varied substantially by region, patient characteristics, and socioeconomic context. So, less likely to get a kidney transplant if you are class 2 and 3 obese. Obesity interferes with several components of the immune system, including lymphoid tissues integrity, leukocytes development and function, complement systems activation, and the coordination of innate and adaptive immune responses. Overall, obesity results in a less efficient immune response to infectious agents, which, I mean, I think when we talked about COVID and obesity, we kind of all got that. But one author in specific that we read recommended that obesity should be viewed as another form of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and specifically a comorbidity acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which I thought was a really interesting way.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. But like you put that, it's like a different perspective of it.
Yeah.
Which hopefully maybe, I don't know, makes people take it more seriously. I don't know.
I don't know either. So my favorite thing to talk about is longevity. So recent studies have found that obesity takes more years of life than tobacco usage. So that's pretty bad. You're healthier smoking cigarettes and not obese than being obese. That's crazy.
Yikes.
To think about. Yeah. I think it increases your risk of, this is off the top of my head, but I think it increases your risk of an early death by 40% is the last things I've seen.
Jeez.
But we don't want to leave you hanging with an all negative episode. The good news is that you have control of your situation. We're here to help. If you remember back to episode 63, intermittent fasting, which we'll link to in the notes, intermittent fasting was really, really effective for weight loss. It appears that almost any intermittent fasting regimen can result in some weight loss. 11 out of 13 intervention trials in a specific reviews reported statistically significant weight loss. Research to date has not demonstrated that alternate day fasting regimens produce superior weight loss in comparison to standard continuous calorie restriction weight loss plans. Another systematic review found that in 27 trials, some randomized, some without a control group, addressing weight loss in overweight and obese patients specifically, which is pretty relevant to this episode. All 27 trials found significant weight loss with intermittent fasting with no serious adverse events. Weight loss on these studies was 0.8% to a whopping 13% of total body weight. And the time periods were 2 weeks to 1 year, which would be why there's a big spread in. Yeah. So my guess is that the 2 weeks you lost 0.8%. Well, if you're 200 pounds, 0.8% is what? Lauren, I'm not getting this.
Nope, I'm not the math person. But it's still, 13% is huge.
Whopping. That's a lot.
Like,
of your body weight?
Almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that'd actually be healthy for me to lose 13% of my body weight at this point. Yeah, so intermittent fasting. If you want to learn more about intermittent fasting, go check out our episode 63 and also episode 62, where we talked to Dr. Mayer. And he believes that intermittent fasting is the best way. It also seems to be one of the easiest ways to stick to, as opposed to regular restrictive diets that get all the hype.
Yeah, restricted diets are not all they're cracked up to be, in
No.
my opinion. Also, make sure you check out episode 45. That is a whole episode on habit formation. So if you're just getting started with making a goal of wanting to lose weight or work out more or whatever it is, to take control of your health, some general tips for habit formation we'll go over right now. But again, listen to the episode if you want more. So small specific actions are more likely to become habitual. We talk about this all the time. Start small. That's how you can actually make it sustainable. You don't just go for like big, huge, unachievable goals right off the bat. Start small because you can stick to it. Making the action easy to do increases the likelihood that it becomes a habit. Again, make it easy for yourself. Actions that involve physical movement are easier to condition into a habit. So if you're trying to create a habit that is not very physical, for example, at the beginning of the day, you want to pause and decide what is most important or what are the most important things to accomplish that day. Try to add a physical component such as having a journal and a pen near you to write these down. But if you're trying to, do something physical like exercise, that's apparently involving physical movement is easier to do in a habit formation. Habits that have auditory and or visual cues associated with them will be easier to create and maintain. Set an alarm for like when you want to work out. That's my first alarm in the morning. It's not wake up. It says work out.
Nice.
That was one of the things I did when I first started working out, however many years ago. 5 now, maybe? I don't know. I lost track.
So, challenge this week. We know that most of our listeners have been taking steps to improve their health and their life and completing our other challenges. But if you're new to the show, maybe you're just starting to take control of your health and your life. In that case, go back and listen to episodes 45 and 63 to start. And yeah, do that. Lauren, great job today.
Great job, Travis. This was fun.
This was fun. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And we will see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and are getting benefits from our content.
If your life is improving in part due to the information in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate you sharing the episode with your family and friends on social media and leaving us a review so we can continue to reach more people and improve the health and happiness of the community at large.
Thanks again, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast.